Thank you for joining us this morning in practice. Deeply grateful for the changes in our culture and technology that made things go hybrid, which is a fascinating thing because to be grateful for that also means to acknowledge really dramatic, traumatic situation. And my family lost 2 members to COVID, and many more lost much more, right? And yet here we sit today, several years later, returning more or less to life as normal, but yet with an indelible mark made by a pandemic, a disease that no one saw coming that took life, significant amount of life. And in that, some beautiful things emerged. And this was part of the challenge of our practice. It's one of the most frequently discussed things in my work. The question, why do bad things happen? How do bad things happen? Why do we have to suffer? What is going on? How do we deal with this? How do we get away from it so that we don't have to experience so much of it anymore? All of these types of things. How can I maintain my practice in the face of these difficulties? What is the skillful means for life? Right? And I think what's so fascinating about that question is that moment of judgment, the slicing and dicing that happens when we label something as good and bad. And it's this very process, this very moment in our psychological, spiritual experience that Zen practice is addressing. Zen practice is not addressing whether or not you have an adverse life circumstance. It is not saying that we can exercise control over the external world so that we do not suffer. Right? That is not the teaching, that is not the practice. The practice is to look within ourselves at the very process of how we create an identity or a judgment or a preference that then slices and dices reality into narrow categories. And our practice is learning to release. Right? Now, what's interesting about being in kind of a more tantric awakening is that we aren't trying to release attachment and aversion to the point where we no longer experience them. Right? That's part of the path. We have to become detached to our process of clinging and pushing away. Right? That's an essential step to no longer be caught up in and identified with the process of clinging and rejecting. But then we go a step further in a tantric awakening. Right? It's like that process of detachment allows us to abide with pure witness, allows us to have a union moment. Right? And we can abide in this bliss of complete detached equanimity. Pure, blissful, ever-renewing consciousness becomes our abode. And this has a beautiful quality in how we present ourselves to the world. Most often we start to be calm, content, skillful, spontaneously responding with skillful means. Right? But there's something that can happen there, and that is a sneaky little judgment that we have attained something, that we are superior, that others who are still stuck in attachment and aversion are not doing their work, all right? And we create another subtler form of dualism. And so we return with the commitment to help other people, right? Step one Put your own mask on first. Develop your own connection to the divine. Clarify your own attachment and detachment process. Step 1. Step 2, have established within yourself a power of commitment that says, now that I have done this thing, I will stay in the world to be supportive to others who have not yet done this thing. Okay. What does this do? Well, for one, it helps us move the world around us, because at the highest level of realization, we are not two. We are all one organism. We are all one consciousness. So if someone is out there suffering, I am suffering. Right? Now that's pretty abstract, and it's kind of like a philosophical view until you have the awakening experience that makes it true. So that's not necessarily a powerful motivation, but there is a powerful motivation of, well, I didn't like suffering, and now I feel better. I would like other people to feel better too, right? And so we do this. And it keeps us engaged with suffering. And it also challenges us to see that it's all okay. It's all part of the path. And this is where we start to get into our more tantric awakening. And that good and bad are just degrees of the same thing. Our preferences and our judgments, what we cling to and what we avoid, is just different degrees of the same thing. If we take dislike, absolute loathing on one end of the spectrum, and we take absolute addicted love on the other end of the spectrum, and we start to work them towards each other, they fade into dislike and like. And as they get closer, they fade again into meh, eh, right? And as they get closer again, they fade into, we can't even tell whether we like it or don't like it. But it's all the same thing. It's all just one spectrum and a function of degrees. And so our task and our opportunity as we face our own attachments and aversions, and as we bring this practice forward in our lives, is to continue expanding our capacity to experience the extremes of like and dislike as they are the same thing, because they are. And now we no longer need to slice and dice reality. We no longer need to categorize things as good or bad. We can simultaneously see that COVID was a horrible, destructive force, and it produces many valuable, important changes in our world, and is having deep ramifications on the human experience and collective psychology. Both are true. In any given moment, both are true. There is always, always an aspect that is good, so-called, that we like, that we prefer, that we see value in, that we think is a higher vibration, and an aspect which is not that. Refrain from settling on one or the other. Faith in Mind teaching by Santan, third patriarch of our lineage, has a opening quote which goes something, not exactly, but something like, the great way is not difficult as long as we refrain from making preferences. Simply abandon like and dislike, and here we are, right now, in the kingdom of heaven. Pretty simple. Maybe not so easy, but ultimately very simple. That was the thought for this morning. Thank you all very much for your attention. I look forward to whatever discussion unfolds now.
Just lovely. I like it. It was exactly what, not exactly, but very much points to what I discussed yesterday morning in the European morning service practice period, where I invited the participants to practice with me the Mondo Zen Kata. And there was one person who told afterwards, or even during the practice, like, I can't go into anger right now because there is no anger. I'm just very calm and there's a lot of equanimity. There is no anger. And I told him, please just play a little bit of theater, be a star, be a movie star, whatever, play it. And yeah, he still had difficulties. He did as best he could. And afterwards, we had a discussion. And in this discussion, we also came to this, even though you are in a blissful state, even though you're just joyful and happy and relaxed, switching to another mode, and then coming back. And like, for me, this is the, as in the same as in meditation. It's not that we are always perfectly concentrated. I mean, yes, maybe so, but the more important thing is how fast are we able to come back. So when we go out of something, to come back or to switch whatever mode we are. So the flexibility. This is what I would say. What's your thoughts to this?
Yeah, that's a start, right? That's a start. And it still lives in a world of either or. What about the possibility of being blissfully happy while also being profoundly angry? Again, these are not two. Why? Because in the bliss of meditative awareness, there is a remarkable clarity. And anger, at this depth of mind, is nothing other than absolute clarity about what is skillful and what is unskillful. And so we experience a righteous indignation. A righteous indignation is like a absolute knowing that something that is occurring is unacceptable. A radical clarity that a boundary is being violated and that this is not okay. That does not mean that we are no longer blissful. That does not mean that we are no longer content, equanimitous, full of sympathetic joy, and capable of compassion. Not exclusive. And then from here, from this place where both are true, our response, oh, it can look so different. It can look so different. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe what is exactly necessary in that moment is a forceful expression of emotion to serve the other person in realizing what's happening. But our internal state is not trapped, is not caught up in, is not identified with. Right? And this is a difficult place, and it's an easy thing to trick ourselves into thinking that we're doing from an enlightened perspective and blah, 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 right? If we know that this is what it's supposed to feel like when we're enlightened, after we blow up, we can go, yeah, I really did that from a place of clarity. That was really necessary. You know, we're very good at lying to ourselves. And so this radical self-reflection and extreme, brutal self-honesty and this absolute commitment to seeing through is even more essential when we're on a path that includes everything. When we're on a path that can exclude things, if we're on a path that just says no, an enlightened one is never angry. Right? An arhat has eliminated all forms of anger from their existence. That's very simple. That's very cut and dry. We will never express anger. There is no room for this. That part of existence is unskillful, bad, not of God, and whatever, right? But this is exclusionary. And I don't know about you, but every experience I've ever had relating to anything that talked about God God has a wrathful quality. Right? Whether it's aspects of the Hindu deities, aspects of the Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic faiths, aspects of occultism, aspects of Buddhist deities, right? Wrath is included in the pantheon. It is an essential, a characteristic of divinity as love. But what does that really look like? So yes, your response to your practitioner was spot on. And
There's something from you, Marie. Otherwise, I had another question. Go ahead. Okay. um, there is another philosophy. We also talked about it in different other circumstances that we're facing mostly the troubles or the shit that we are able to deal with. So looking at our world situation, when I listened to your talk, I thought there are so many catastrophes currently going on this planet Earth. You can put your head into the ground and look away and say, oh my gosh, that's all, we will all die. Yes, we will, but this will all be bad and difficult and whatever. Or we could go and have a kind of celebration. Oh, hey, wow, look at this. So many beautiful crisis options to learn and practice and grow and expand our edges, whatever. How would you say, or how would you see this, what I see from my perspective?
again, it's phrased as an either or. So yes, there is always chaos and turmoil in the world. And yes, that is how we grow and how evolution happens. And that is a beautiful truth. Right? And it's this turning point. It's this adjustment in our process. It's this realization that is so essential to the path of complete awakening, which is that Gaia, the Mother Nature, the organism, the unfolding of life, by necessity includes destruction. Affirm life. I respect all sentient and insentient beings and always act with compassion toward them. In order to live, it is necessary for me to take life. I do so with gratitude for the life taken and reverence. I do not take my own life for granted. Many people come to our practice and hear this part and they have views on, especially on diet. That's where we run into it the most, on veganism. And that's great, be vegan. But you're still killing stuff. Right? For us to live, other things have to die. Our white blood cells are killing shit constantly. Right? There is no life without destruction. There is no new forest without a wildfire. Right? And so it's not seeing it as a catastrophe and believing it as catastrophe, or seeing it as a potential for growth and celebrating the potential for growth in the destruction. It is simultaneously recognizing the agony of destruction while noticing the essential of destruction for its beauty and growth. Right? Same thing. They are the same thing. And we don't even have to pick one side of the coin or the other. Right? We can be present to both truths simultaneously. And this is equanimity.
I'm now thinking of a balance who is not only that broad, but like
Yeah,
because ugh, but if you put it on a bigger scale, not so, how can I say it? Yeah,
precisely.
all included.
You got it. Now you just gotta go do it. All right, we'll close with that. Thank you all very much.